Hey dudes, and welcome back to The Bants. As always, I am your host, The Bants, and it's finally Friday, the end of the week. But before we can get into the weekend, it's time for our third and final What's Happening in Fashion this week, so let's just get right into it. And first up, as always, we have our headlines for the day. And in our first headline, Brand Finance put out their top 50 most valuable apparel brands for 2018, and in all honesty, the list is pretty interesting. And although there were no major shocks on this list, I do have to say how some of the things have changed over the last year are actually pretty surprising. First off, I would say probably the most surprising to me would be the inclusion of Chinese brand Chow Tai Fook on the list, just because, you know, I'm not used to ever seeing this brand compared to everything else on the list. But I guess when you really think about it, not having a Chinese brand on the top 50 most valuable apparel list would probably be more surprising than it not being there. It just happens that we in the West don't really know about it, so good shit to them for that. But aside from that, I think another thing that really kind of surprised me looking at this list and trending and forecast as far as apparel brands go was how much luxury fashion has risen in the last year. I mean, yes, we've seen it on social media, and yes, we've seen it on influencers and rappers and everybody else that considers themselves fashionable. But even so, seeing all these brands actually have such a big uptick, really surprising. And going off of that, the most surprising thing in my opinion was, out of all the luxury brands that did the best, the one that sits at the top isn't actually Louis Vuitton, it's Hermes, which I didn't see coming. And although based on this forecast, we also see that athletic wear and most departments has actually been more on a downtick, obviously there are still two companies out there that are still powerhouses and still killing it, and that is obviously Nike and Adidas. Adidas has obviously been having a killer couple of years and has only been getting better and better, although even with as much of an increase as they had last year and seeing them in the 4th spot overall, I don't know exactly how long they're going to be keeping this up, because in my head they're slowly becoming what Nike has been the last couple years. And interesting enough, on the flip side of that, Nike is still number one, so congrats to them on that. And even though personally I have never been a huge fan of Nike myself, I don't wear Nike product, I don't wear Nike shoes, and I never really have, seeing them at number one still, even after a couple really bad years, I can only assume and only think that they've actually put a little bit more time and a little bit more effort recently into some of their products and some of their designs, and I don't see this downtrend actually lasting much longer for them. If anything, I see Nike doing much better over the next couple years than Adidas does, but once again, only time will tell if I'm right on that. And all I really got to end this off with is, once again, congratulations to Nike on being number one, and best of luck as always to you guys in the future, though if you are number one in the world, I don't think you really need to hear that from me. Alright, and now moving on to our second headline of the day. Amy Leverton just put out her newest book, self-titled Denim, and honestly, everybody should check this out. If you consider yourself a fan of menswear, especially in the Americana heritage denim departments, and you don't know who Amy Leverton is, definitely write this name down and let me give you a brief history of some of the stuff that she's done. She's written for a slew of different websites over the years, whether it be on forecasting or opinion pieces, but mainly focused around Americana denim, as I've been talking about, and has always been a consistent and very good contributor to Heddles, formerly known as Raw Denim, which is where you've probably seen her the most. Aside from that, she does run a tiny YouTube channel called Denim Dudes, which I really suggest all you guys to subscribe to, and I will link down in the description below. And if that name sounds familiar, it is because she wrote a book that she put out a couple years back titled the same thing, Denim Dudes. And if you're not familiar with that book, it basically goes through a slew of different people in the industry, whether they be style icons, designers, or just focused around denim in general, and basically just teaches you a little bit more about what they're interested in and their greatest outfits, basically. And where Denim Dudes focused on the guys in the industry, this next book here is the sequel, Denim, and it focuses more on the ladies in the industry. So if you haven't already picked up Denim Dudes, definitely check that out, and if you already have, definitely look forward to this new book, because God knows I have been, and I will be picking it up very soon as well. And not that I feel like I need to say this, but this is obviously not a sponsor. I have fucking 12 subscribers. Who am I gonna possibly sell to? But I just really like Amy Leverton's work, and I think every single one of you will like it as well too. So that's my 2 cents. Alright guys, and with that, let's move on to our art stories for the day. And first up, it was announced that there will be a new graffiti exhibit appearing in LA next month called Beyond the Streets, and I am super excited for this. Some of you may remember that a couple years back there was a similar exhibit at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles called Art in the Streets, and personally I went to that, absolutely fucking loved it. Sure, not every single renowned graffiti artist was there, but fuck, a lot of them were, and if you didn't have a chance to go see that, I highly recommend this. This is just gonna be amazing. Not only are a bunch of the legends gonna be there, like Shepard Fairey, Futura, Revoke, and fuck, a ton of others, but they're also including a couple fine artists as well too. Some of the names that have popped out on the list so far for me are obviously Felipe Pantone and Takashi Murakami, and God knows there's going to be a bunch of others as well. So if you happen to be in LA in the months of May and June this year, definitely take a couple hours, set them aside, and definitely go check out this exhibit. Otherwise, just wait for the galleries to show up, and obviously I will be posting those here during that time as well. Then Hypebeast put out a nice little opinion piece on the face-off between George Condo and Pablo Picasso, and honestly it was an interesting read. They go into a little bit of the backstory between the two artists, they talk a little bit about similarities between their paintings and a couple of the differences, and just basically how the art scene has exploded in wanting their works, specifically in China, and how the newest upcoming auctions might prove to see who is more popular. And even though obviously everyone's entitled to their own opinion on this, I obviously really regard both artists, even though obviously I probably regard Picasso a lot more, but that's just because of the history of everything. But even so, if you do consider yourself a fan of art and more interested in just how similar these two are and just how much their work has blown up over the couple years, especially Condo, I would definitely give this a read. And lastly, Prohibited did a nice quick little video interview with Ron English. So if you want to just hear a little bit more about things he's done in the past and just, you know, seeing how quirky he is in general, I definitely give this a watch as well. Alright, and then moving on to fashion now, Parra showed off some more pieces from his Spring/Summer 2018 collection, and they're pretty decent. Now obviously I've talked about this before, obviously I do have a little bit of Parra bias, but even so, I would say that this lookbook collection was pretty decent overall. Sure, they're not the most original pieces here, the most original graphics, but when it comes to Parra, his stuff is always fairly fun, very playful, and overall, if you are just looking for some lighthearted streetwear, this is always just a great place to start. And maybe it's just me, but this shirt right here, anyone else getting some Oyasumi Poon Poon vibes? Because I kinda dig it. Then Ystrdys Tmmr showed off their Spring/Summer 2018 lookbook, and overall it was interesting. I would consider myself a fan of Ystrdys Tmmr, though this lookbook is by no means their best showing, it definitely isn't. But even with that said, I do really enjoy some of the things here. I think the tie-dyes are very nicely done for a toned down look. I do really like a lot of the layering and the silhouetting here, and overall just some pretty solid pieces outside of the accessories, which I really don't like at all. But if you do find yourself looking for a couple streetwear-esque summer staples, I would definitely start looking here. Definitely some decent pieces. Then brand Denham and Atelier Reserve came together for their newest collaboration, and I really enjoyed it. Even for always being on the crazier design side, silhouetting side of denim, Denham seems to have just become even more alive since their anniversary, and I do have to give them props for that. And that can even be seen in this collaboration here. I mean, yes, there are some very crazy parts to these pieces, and obviously the embroideries and the patches are the most eye-popping of all. But when you start looking at the actual intricacies of the pieces, just how they were designed, the way they were patterned and everything, really fascinating stuff, and up there with some of Denham's best. So if you even consider consider yourself the slightest fan of denim, especially more on the experimental side, definitely worth checking this out. Then Uniqlo showed off their newest SPRZ NY collection, and it was pretty nice overall. Yes, I know what you're thinking. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I am by no means a huge fan of fast fashion, whether it be H&M, Forever 21, Zara, or even Uniqlo. But when it comes to Uniqlo, I do at least give them a slide on some things just because of their past history with at least being somewhat decent to human beings. And as far as the SPRZ collection goes, Uniqlo or otherwise, if any brand is putting out graphics at least this consistently good, this commonly, and for the price that it is, I don't see why any graphic fan wouldn't be interested in picking those up. And maybe you're on the same side of the fast fashion fence as I am, where you don't like to look at it, you don't like to talk about it, but whether or not you are, I think we can all agree that there's some at least decent graphics here, and even if you don't plan on buying it, I think they're still at least worth checking out. Then, because they haven't been in the news for the last couple weeks, Kith decided to drop 3 collaborations at once in the last week, so let's just go over all of those. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, Ronnie, now I understand why you have 8 fucking designers on your team. So first up, we have the Utah collection, and personally, I think this is a absolutely fantastic collection to go along with a lot of the other stuff Kith has been doing over the last couple of months. I mean, the quality of the pieces is there, the technical detailing is on point. As far as outfitting goes, doesn't matter if it has a pattern or a color style or a motif otherwise, everything here feels super cohesive. And that's really not easy to do, and the fact they were able to do that in pretty much 3 different outfit colorways, I can't help but commend them on this, even if personally I wouldn't wear any of these pieces. If you've been looking for some new activewear pieces, some new sportswear pieces, and haven't been able to find any decent ones in some pastel colors, definitely look here first. Then they had their military collection, and this one was a little bit more hit or miss for me. I think one thing that's kind of been more shed to light for me over these last couple collections and over reviewing Kith these last couple months is that when it comes to a lot of graphic designs, that's definitely not their strong suit, and that really shows here. But aside from the more cheesy and kind of lazy graphics, everything else here is very solid once again. I mean, the jackets are super nice, as is the denim, as is a lot more of the, if you want to call it, military wear. But even aside from just the quality of the pieces, the detailing is super on point too. I mean, just aesthetically very pleasing. The zippers and the other functionality make a lot of sense in my opinion when going for this style. And overall, if you're into that sort of kind of vintage military wear, but a little bit more brought up modernly, or maybe you just kind of like those colors mixed into a kind of streetwear-esque feel, you'll definitely find something here that you like. And lastly, they had their Iceberg Mickey Mouse collaboration, and this completely falls flat in my opinion. When you're taking a character that's as iconic as Mickey Mouse and throwing it onto a graphic on a shirt, then you really have to step up your game, because everything's already really been done before, and that kind of shows here. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to go insanely crazy with their new designs in the same way that Opening Ceremony just did recently with their Disney collaboration, but just to give you kind of an idea of what's already been done before, and I hate to go back to the brand, but Uniqlo just did a Mickey Mouse Fantasia collection themselves, and it blows this shit out of the fucking water in both design aspect and definitely in price aspect, and possibly even in quality aspects, knowing Uniqlo. So what can I say? Am I really surprised by this? No, because what I just talked about in their military collection is that Kith really doesn't design graphics very well. I think the Atelier being their champion collaboration they did recently. But even then, it was really just flipping a champion logo. No real graphics involved there. So all I gotta say to Ronnie is maybe it's time to start looking for a ninth designer, maybe one that's a little bit more graphically inclined. All right, and with that, let's move on to our articles for the day. And first up, Heddels put out another nice little piece of the history / an introduction to Sashiko in Denim, basically. So if you're interested in that kind of repair technique, or it's completely new to you and you want to learn a little bit more about it, definitely check this out. Then High Snobiety sat down with Martin Asbjorn, talking a little bit about his fashion label and what he's kind of doing to reinvent Scandinavian fashion in general. So if you're interested in learning more about him or his brand, I definitely give this a read. Then Put This On put out a very fantastic article on how to judge the quality of clothing pieces, and they kind of give a brief introduction onto what to look for, and then they go really in depth into specific pieces. And although they do definitely talk more about men's classical pieces and more contemporary pieces, I still think that everybody should really give this a read, because it starts to kind of give you an idea of what to look for in other pieces going forward. So if you want to know a little bit more about the back ends of fashion and what really considers quality, definitely give this article a look. And lastly, Grail sat down with Curtis Hennager, former employee of Atelier New York and now of DSM New York, and he talks about kind of the pros and cons of working in a retail space where you have access to so much fashion and designers and buyers and those things. So if you've ever been interested more in the retail space of fashion and just exactly what that can actually bring for you in both pros and cons, definitely give this article a look. Very insightful. Alright guys, and with that, we've reached the end of our third and final whiff for the week. Hope you guys have enjoyed, and as always, if you want to look at some more pictures that I didn't include in the articles above, or want to read some of the articles I talked about today, I've linked all those down in the description down below. And as always guys, if you enjoy these videos, obviously feel free to give them a like, or feel free to give me a follow as well. I do appreciate all of you guys supporting this content and watching the videos. And if you do have any questions, comments, concerns, or just want to talk fashion in general, always feel free to hit me up in the comments down below. I'm always willing to talk fashion. And with that, thank you guys once again. I hope you guys have a good weekend, and as always, until next time.